Science and technology and innovation, these are indispensable in the modern economy, in the modern world.
We held a meeting at the MSI, and we resolved among about 6 to 8 of us, local members, first to form PAASE Philippines so that we could continue to host meetings here, but also to go on a massive campaign to try to get support from the national government through the legislative and executive branches to invest more in science and technology. So it started with a white paper, a position paper that we co-authored among 6 of us, namely Ernie Pernia, Cesar Saloma, Rador Asansa, Toby Diarita of Ateneo, and Aldin Colaba de la Salle, and myself.
So PAASE historically, in the past 10, 20 years for sure, have been collaborating with our counterparts here in the Philippines at various universities. And a lot of these interactions probably started as peer-to-peer. But thankfully, we have the Department of Science and Technology here in the Philippines, and they've come up with some really helpful and very impactful programs that actually enable PAASE members that are based in the United States and other parts of the world to actually come here and do extensive research and academic partnerships and collaborations.
Well, I think that one of the good things that PAASE is doing is really trying to stay in touch with the researchers and the scientists here in the Philippines. So I think that is one of the good programs that they keep on supporting some of the initiatives of our researchers and scientists here in the country, trying to align also their assistance towards the plans of the Philippine government.
It's very important that the PAASE members and scientists based in the Philippines are continuously in contact, so we will know the needs of the Filipinos and opportunities that Filipinos can have to do science with their PAASE counterparts. So these interactions, such as the conference that we're holding and the annual conferences that we have.
The Philippines and the scientists there have very unique perspective that adds to discoveries and inventions, advancing in general the field.
These members, because they are part of an academy, it implies that they are productive. So they have publications, they have innovations, they have inventions, patents, and they have, they have an impact on society. Okay, so these are the people who can convince government, invest more in science and technology, and that was really the gist of our paper, our position paper and it is Ernie Pernia who said that R&D by nature is expensive and it is a public good. So it is important for the government to take the lead in investing in R&D.
To increase the economic growth potential of the country, we cannot continue to just rely on traditional inputs into production as capital and labor. We also need to develop our expertise in science and technology and innovation so that we can come up with new systems, new ways of doing things.
I think that science, researchers, industry, and even the government is really like an ecosystem of knowledge. So I think it doesn't really matter if you're coming from a private institution or a public institution, such as a state university. I think we all have a role to play to improve the research capabilities and scientific knowledge here in the country. I think it is about time for us to realize that one of our roles as academics, as researchers, as scientists, is to actually contribute to that global body of knowledge.
And the role of this cooperation among these government agencies really is to be able to attract science and technology, global-based companies to set up shop here. And that is really key in terms of developing the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country.
Particularly because there's that deep desire. And what PAASE does and can do more of is to promote this relationship between its members.
We really need to ratchet up the appreciation, the recognition of the importance of science and technology and innovation.
And we are all trying to attain what we call the common good, the greater, higher, long-term good of the Filipino people.
Okay, I think we can get started. It's 8:01 p.m., so right on the dot. Good morning or good evening if you're on the other side of the world to everybody. Welcome to all of you joining this plenary session, which is session 4, Outreach to Philippine Regions. And this is one of the online plenary sessions during this week or month of the 40th anniversary of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, and also our annual scientific meeting. My name is Francis De Los Reyes, and I'm a professor of environmental engineering at North Carolina State University. And I'm really pleased to welcome you all to this session. The topic of this session is the theme of the entire conference, and we'll highlight really important work being done by scientists and researchers that directly impact the quality of life of Filipinos and Filipino communities. We've had a good few weeks of exciting scientific talks, and it's not quite over yet, so we still have next week. But I'm really excited to learn about the expertise of our scientists and how they're used to positively impact our country, especially the poor, and maybe inspire us and help us all take a broader view of science and technology and how we can address the plight of the poor and underserved communities. So we really have an exciting, distinguished set of speakers this morning, and I'm looking forward to their talks and the discussion with all of you, and I do expect a vigorous discussion. So we will get started, but some reminders. As you all know, we've muted everybody except for the speakers, so please mute your microphones and keep them muted. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat, in the Zoom chat, and we'll get your question answered. And we have a lot of time, hopefully a lot of time for questions. So we'll get started. So let me share my screen so I can introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is Father Ben Nebres. Father Ben has a really distinguished career, and so I'm not going to try to capture everything, but I tried to highlight some of the things in this slide. As you all know, he is a national scientist, and he was conferred this in September 2011 by President Benigno Aquino III. And before that, he was elected academician of the National Academy of Science and Technology in 1984. But we probably all best know him as the long-running president of Ateneo de Manila University from 1993 to 2011. And at Ateneo, he started as a math teacher, went through the ranks to become professor, dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, rector, and so on. And still, he is a professor at Ateneo. He was also president of Xavier University in Cagayan de Oro. And he's been involved with a lot of task forces and groups with the Department of Education, with the OST, and also the Commission on Higher Education. I'm not going to list all of his awards. I just wanted to highlight a few here, like the Ordre de Palme Académie, given by the French government, and also the rank of officer in the National Order of Merit of the French Republic, and also very recently an honorary doctorate from the University, Catholic University de Lille. And let's see. So with that, let me start sharing Father Ben's slides. Just a second. Okay. Sorry, my computer is now acting up. Let's see, let's do that again.
Okay, thank you. So, Francis, do I start?
Yes, go ahead, Father Ben.
So, thank you very much, Francis. And I'd like to begin by thanking Dr. Giselle Concepcion, President of PAASE and PAASE Board, for inviting me to give this lecture, and Francis for hosting this webinar. I really look forward to a very fruitful exchange with my colleagues on the panel and with all the participants in this conference. The title, An Inconvenient Truth, I think will become clear when we get to the end and explain the situation we have of child hunger and malnutrition in our country. So we move to the first major slide. So next. Okay. Since this is a science group, I want to explain that my work with facing child malnutrition really started because of my work in math and science. I taught in the Ateneo High School and did teacher training for public schools and continued this work when I came back from graduate studies. And I started trying to develop math PhD and research programs, but I soon realized that a major bottleneck we have is really the low number and low quality of our high school graduates. There are very, very few comparatively who can do well in mathematics and science in our universities because of the entry levels. And 90% come from the public schools. That's why I started working with the public schools. In 1972, I started working with colleagues in Southeast Asia, and it was very clear how far behind we are in the quality of high school graduates. I was especially struck by Vietnam, which was at war at that time, but still had a lot more excellent mathematics and science graduates than we were having. So that's why I started working with the public schools. Next slide. Can we go? Okay. So we worked for many years with the public schools. We did what most universities do. We did teacher training, materials development, principals training, and so on. But we could not really measure whether we were helping them improve, because at least if you look at the National Achievement Test results, they were not really improving, especially in the high school level. So in the year 2000, I was president then of Ateneo de Manila. We decided to focus on 4 very large and very poor schools in Payatas. And I instructed my team that let's do whatever it takes to help improve those schools. And I worked with the principals of those schools. They did improve. But we soon learned that a major problem was health and hunger. Sabi ng mga teachers, gutom sila. A story we used to tell at that time is a boy in Parañaque. Hinimatay siya, he fainted, and then when he revived, sabi niya, Huwebes pala. And the teacher says, what even Huwebes pala? The family is so poor, they take turns not eating. Huwebes, hindi siya kumakain. And we found out in Payatas, the children had a choice. They could either go to school and not eat, or they could go and scavenge in the garbage dumps and have something to eat. In rural areas like in Cabiao, pwede silang mangkapas sa bukid and kakain sila, or they go to school and don't eat. So hunger is a real problem. We go on. Next slide. Sorry. Okay, so we started in the year 2000. We partnered with Jollibee Foundation's Busog Lusog Talino. It's a program that Jollibee has where they provide lunch for the 40 of the poorest children in selected public schools. So we work with them in the public schools that we were working with at the time, about a dozen of them. Their menus were developed by FNRI, and vegetable-based with protein sources. And people are always surprised when we told them the cost per meal was only 11 pesos and 50 centavos. But amazingly, this one additional meal was enough to bring them all the risk to health. So we started doing that in several schools. Next. We move to the next slide. And then we started to scale up. In 2008, the principal of Bagong Silangan Elementary School, one of the 4 full schools we worked with, asked us, sabi niya, we have of 8,000 pupils and half of them are hungry most of the time. Could you provide lunch for them? Sabi namin, we cannot do that. We can only do it, we can do 400 because we have to give our own funds. So we started doing 400 in Bagong Silangan Elementary School. And then Dr. Bengson from the Ateneo Professional Schools found that out. And so he said in 2010 that the Ateneo Professional Schools, 4 of them, would contribute 1 million pesos each. And they would help us provide lunch for 4,000 school children in 4 public elementary schools along Commonwealth Avenue. In around 2011, Mayor Sargon Gatchalian saw a kitchen and sabi niya, I've always wanted to provide lunch for my school children, but I did not know how. And so that's our biggest kitchen. Provides lunch for about 16,000 to 18,000 children every school day, half in the daycare centers and half in the elementary school. So now I'd like to show you some images of what Central Kitchen. So it's a technology that's developed by Ateneo Center for Educational Development. The very first was in Manuel Luis Quezon Elementary School in Quezon City. Next slide. So if you enter any of our kitchens, you will see a whiteboard. On the left, you'll see the menu for the day. It's always vegetable-based with some protein sources. To the right here, you see the 4 elementary schools, ML, UPS, and so on. And then the assignment by day of Nanay volunteers. So the volunteer assignments are there. So all our kitchens have that system. It's based very much on volunteerism and support of the community. Okay. Next slide. Here you see the parent volunteers, mostly women, mostly nanays. May tatay din, pero ilan lang sila. You see the malunggay preparation area. So to Dr. Giselle, we always have malunggay in every meal. So here they are stripping the malunggay for the meals. You'll see this in every kitchen that we have. Next. You see, it's one of the very first children that we provided meals for. Praying, they pray before meals. We have hand washing places, so they all wash their hands and before eating, and they pray before eating. Okay. Next slide. I want to cite Valenzuela City. Senator Sherwin, then mayor, started. It was taken over by his brother, Mayor Rex, and he has really developed it. I cite it because it's become the model that we have, and any new LGU that wants to implement, we bring them to Valenzuela so they can learn. So it's a template of cooperation between local government, school officials, parents, and our private university or Gawad Kalinga, a private group that helps manage it. The city government, led by the mayor, at that time Valenzuela provided all the funding. Now, a lot of the funding comes from the national government. They built a central kitchen. And as you know, when you use government funds, you always have to worry about procurement systems and COA. So they figured out the whole system for procurement and for making sure that they met auditing requirements and provided the transportation to the different schools. Next slide. So Ateneo provided the management. We have an Ateneo manager there. He has to get up at 2 a.m. every day because they started cooking at 3 a.m. Community volunteers do the cooking and the cleaning. And in the different schools, the principals, the teachers, and the parents handle food distribution. Next slide. Oops. Oh, here. So you see the Valenzuela Kitchen volunteers. It's a huge place. They start as early as 3 a.m. It's quite an operation. You should visit, I invite you to visit the PAASE USA. Visit it next time you come to the Philippines. Next slide. Francis, the next. This is the transport system. They have these minivans with the sign ticketing food patrols, quite cute. And the traffic people in Valenzuela move them on so that hindi mapanis yung pagkain. And you see here the picture of Vice Mayor Lorena, Natividad, Sherwin Gatchalian, Grace Poe, and Rex Gatchalian. We thank them because they've been supporting the program. So that was Ateneo starting it. And then I also am on the board of Gawad Kalinga. In 2014, after Typhoon Yolanda, GK, I went with GK to Leyte, and we saw that hunger was really very serious, especially among the children. So Gawad Kalinga established what's called Kusina ng Kalinga. They adopted the technology developed by Ateneo Blue Plate, and we started providing, we provided kitchens in Alang-Alang near Tacloban, and then in Ormoc and Cananga. And then in 2015, after the Sub-44 tragedy, we started school feeding in Maguindanao. First, actually, in the Mama Sapano, Radyo Bayan area, and then in Parang, and now in several other cities of several other towns of Maguindanao. In 2017, as soon as we could do it at the end of Ramadan, we put up a Gawad Kalinga kitchen in Sagyaran, which is the main evacuation center for the evacuees of the siege of Marawi. And now I'll show you some images. Francis, next slide. So that's me. I went in March 2015. I went to Mama Sapano area. This is an evacuation center for about 2,000 or 3,000 people. I was wearing a GK yellow shirt because it was important to be identified. There were still encounters going on around the place, and we had to be quite careful. So here they are, to explain to them what we are going to do. Next slide. Francis, children. These are the children of Mama Sapano area evacuees eating their meals. And I want to show you a lot of pictures of children because that's really what it is for. It is really for our children. And no matter how difficult, or for our Gawad Kalinga teams, no matter how dangerous, they try to go because we have to take care of the children. Next slide. Francis. So this is now Marawi. So this is our kitchen in the evacuation area, Sagyaran, the town nearest Marawi. We actually started a month after the war started, right at the end of Ramadan. So that's our kitchen there, and our volunteers. Our volunteers are actually evacuees, Maranao evacuees, except for the leaders. And then you see the children there, evacuee children from Marawi. Next slide. Francis. So next. Oh. So a story I often tell is actually when we went to that kitchen, we could not start immediately. We found out that that kitchen was so near ground zero that the floor would shake with the bombing, and we could really see the smoke and everything. And we were, Gawad Kalinga leaders were actually nervous and not sure whether we should continue. But Gabi Tombok, who heads this one, and you'll meet her in a video that I'll show later, said something that we tell and we tell. She said, sabi niya, we can see and hear the bombs, but we can also see and hear the children. I think we should listen to the children. And that's really the motto that we have had in all these difficult areas. We have to listen to the children. So here are the teachers and the volunteers, and here are the children. Next slide. Francis. So here's our kitchen. We now have our kitchen in Camp Bago Amay Pakpak Elementary School inside Marawi. And in 2018, 2019 school year, we provided meals for 5,000 children in about 20 schools. So here is the preparation area. It's exactly the same as the very first kitchen that was developed. Continue. Francis. We engage a lot more LGUs. We ran what we call End Hunger Summits and this spread. And finally, the national government began to come in with funding. In 2014, the national government provided funds for malnourished school children of about 1 billion pesos. In 2018, if I am correct, it went up as high as 5 billion pesos for malnourished children in elementary schools and 3 billion for children in daycare centers. In June 2018, finally a law was passed due to a lot of the work of Senators Grace Poe, Sir Gatchalian, Chis Escudero, Bam Aquino, and others, mandating school feeding for all daycare pupils and malnourished children as determined by BMI in public elementary schools. We're very happy about that. Next slide. So I want to cite that the technology that was developed by Ateneo and Kawat Kalinga is now being carried out by mayors themselves. They now take the leaders. And I think that's really our hope that this will spread across the country. Mayor Rex Gatchalian of Valenzuela City really pays personal attention and the model we use. Governor Uy of Compostela Valley is our hero for governors. He has put up central kitchens in all the towns of Compostela Valley. In Nueva Ecija, it's a model for us of partnership between DepEd division, because it was led by the division superintendent and assistant division superintendent. I work with Gawad Kalinga and mayors in several towns, and GK, Ateneo, and Jollibee do the training of volunteers and managers. Next. However, so we have made progress on daycare and elementary. However, there is a new frontier that we still have to conquer, the so-called first 1,000 days. In other words, malnutrition from pregnancy up to the baby is 2 years old. Daycare at 3 years old is a bit too late. And the statistics that we have are very painful. In 2018, the statistics said that 33% of Filipino children 0 to 5 are stunted, and 1-year-olds are 36.6%. So as I said, school feeding in daycare and elementary is too late. We have to reach pregnant mothers and babies among the poor. There are several models we've been studying. Iligan City has a technology where they prepare their own Cerelac. Quezon Province, the governor has made this his flagship, and so it's really worked very hard on it. But maybe the most interesting is the one developed by Malabon City called Carinderia para sa Kalusugan ni Chiquitin, KKC. We'll show you a picture. Next slide, Francis. So I had a meeting with, in the center, you have Mayor Lenlen Oreta and Mrs. Melissa Oreta. My team is in front. We visited them. To his right is the city health officer and the barangay nutrition workers. And to their left are 2 Carinderia providers. So what they have done is they have accredited about 30 to 50 carinderias across the city, and they put in a lot of protocols. The carinderias prepare the same meals. There is a menu for every day, and each carinderia is assigned about 30 or so families, malapit lang, so they can provide for all of them. It's a very impressive model, and they've definitely cut down malnutrition in the first 1,000 days. We were hoping to spread this, but then the pandemic came, and so it is delayed. But we do hope that we can spread their model, especially in the cities. So finally, the pandemic. What do we do? I said that we want to talk about this as a problem of an inconvenient truth, because if you read Shell Habitus' problem, August 4, he points out that this problem of stunting has been going on for many, many years. In 1989, 44.5% were stunted, and the lowest over the last 50 years has been just 30%. So for the scientific community, I'd like to present this challenge to us. In our last meeting of the National Academy, we said we should study why we rank so low in PISA. I invite us to think, to understand whether this is connected to the brain and body stunting in 1/3 to 1/2 of our children in their early years due to hunger and malnutrition. And we should really consider that a third to a half of our children never had a chance, and that we have to tackle this problem if we want to improve education and science in our country. Some final slides about the pandemic. Francis. So what are we doing in this pandemic since the children are not in school? There are three models. First is Ateneo is implementing a so-called food augmentation program. We provide vegetable food packs once a week, just costing 90 pesos to families of beneficiaries. We have done this in 2 Quezon City public schools for about 500 beneficiaries, and it has worked very well. We're trying to get approval now from the DepEd to roll this out in more places. Okay, the next is the Malabon model, already cited. So this is the next model. In other words, to accredit carinderias. And the last is last Francis to show you a video, which is that Gawad Kalinga is now providing community kitchens per community so that malapit lang and they can provide cooked meals for the children. Right? Thank you.
Sakit baya kay inangano naagog ko'y mga anak niya kana bitong nana ako nulisod baya kay inangano kami og ganikanan okay ra pero ang mga anak lisod baya nga dili bitaw ka nang makakaon bitaw. Ito makabuko kong anak niya akong bana bali pagyod. Dili man siya katrabaho. Muna kami karon magkuyog-kuyog na lang mi kun asa may makapamagol. Karon nang makakaon mi.
May mga bata din na problema. Hindi lamang nila masabi sa guro. Malalaman mo na lamang kung magreklamo na sila. Kung sumakit ang tiyan nila, yun namin malalaman na wala pala silang kain na pumunta dito sa eskwelahan.
So many poor people go hungry on a regular basis. We cannot end poverty without confronting hunger. The poor endure hunger on a regular basis, but its most devastating effects are experienced by the children. Hunger is most cruel to the young. That's why in 2014, Gawad Kalinga launched Kusina ng Kalinga as a response and as a platform to end hunger among children. Kusina ng Kalinga is made possible by the collaborative efforts of individuals and institutions to ensure that no child goes hungry under their watch. Hungry is a big monster, but bayanihan is a much, much bigger force. That's why Kusina ng Kalinga is built on the conviction that together we can end hunger. For the past 6 years, GK worked hand in hand with the Department of Education and various local government units, and together we have established a vast network of 160 kitchens nationwide that can prepare up to 100,000 meals every day. This model is simple. A kitchen is established in a school or community that has access to basic ingredients and supplies. The local government unit provides the regular workforce, and DepEd and private donors provide the meals. But all of this is kept together by a dedicated team of volunteers and workers who wake up at 4 a.m. every day to prepare and distribute thousands of meals. Their caring and sharing is the secret ingredient of K-Food.
Yung mga ingredients po na linuluto namin, galing po sa local. So dito sa Sambuan, dito rin kami bibili ng karne, ng bigas, ng mga gulay na gagamitin namin.
Sa akong 7 ka anak, 5 ang nakadawat sa feeding program. Dako jud kay natabang ang Gawad Kalinga Kusina. Kay nang excited na kay sila nga mo eskwela. Malipayon ko nga nakatabang ni volunteer ko dire sa San Sebastian, nakatabang ko sa mga kabataan. Kay sama na ko nga ginikanan daghan ng dili ra kay ako ray kabos, daghan yung mga kabos.
We have also provided thousands of meals in every major disaster since 2014, beginning with Super Typhoon Yolanda and other typhoons, the eruptions of Mayon and Taal volcanoes, the earthquake in Bacilala, and in the siege of Marawi.
Siyempre, nag-adjust pa sila. Yung iba, di pa nakalimutan yung panahon ng giyera dito sa Marawi. Yung mga ibang bata naging nagkakapubya na.
Nag-umpisa po ang kusina ng Kalinga dito sa Marawi in partnership with DepEd, ARMM pa before. Actually, a month after yon ng Marawi siege. Nagpakain kami ng 1,000 bata noon. And then, January of 2018, na-launch na din po yung kitchen natin dito na mismo sa Marawi.
First time kasi na mangyari dito sa school namin na may pagkain na dinadala. So ang mga bata masaya. Araw-araw pumunta sila sa school kasi alam nila na may feeding na darating.
Last year, ang pupil school, ang learners ko lang dito ay 268. Ngayon, may learners na akong 372. So, isang dahilan ay itong feeding program na bigay sa amin ng kusina ng Kalinga.
Yung mga schools kasi na hinahatidan nila ng pagkain, outside na siya mismo ng center ng Marawi. Sa paghahatid nila, inaabot sila ng mga 2 to 3 hours.
Ako, grade 1 lang. Toyo lang yung ulam ko. Sila, marami pang marating pa sa kanila na mag-aral. Ako hindi ko natapos na. Ay natin daw para sa di nila maranasan yung buhay ko.
Nakita ko sa mga staff na hindi sila yung mga professional or whatsoever, pero nakita nila na pwede din pala silang tumulong.
Nakakatulong ito talaga as process of healing sa mga bata kasi yung excitement ba ng mga bata, nakikita ko talaga na they are excited pag kumukuha sila ng pagkain.
Self-rated hunger has averaged 10% for the past 20 years, which affects roughly around 2.1 million families annually. But as of May 2020, this number has gone up to 4.2 million families due to the effects of the pandemic. Hunger became bigger and its grip became tighter. We are thus called to bring our bayanihan and heroism to a whole new level. Now more than ever, we must work together to make sure that no one gets left behind in this pandemic. Millions of kids will be studying from their homes and communities this year. In these unprecedented and uncertain times, we need to make sure that they get all the help we can give. That is why for this year, Kusina ng Kalinga will go to where the kids are. Gawad Kalinga will establish kitchens in the communities to provide at least one nutritious meal a day for kids aged 1 to 12 years old for at least 120 days. Help us bring food to those who need it the most in this time of pandemic. Join us in our battle against hunger and poverty. We should be able to tell ourselves that no child went hungry under our watch. Hunger ends where caring begins.
So, thank you very much. Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Dr. Rista.
Thank you, Father. And we will have a lot of time for questions for Father Ben after the panel. I think there are questions that are showing up on the chat right now. Maybe we could ask, let's see, there are some comments. So one is from Leah Tolosa. So Father Ben, maybe I'll ask you one question. So this is the comment from Leah Tolosa. I realize GK is a Catholic organization, but can family planning be part of the program? Some families have too many children that arguably leads to poverty and hunger, and it is passed on from generation to generation. The kitchens are a great idea, and I applaud GK for that, but on a certain level, they are a stopgap to the problem. Do you want to comment to that one, Father?
Yes, of course, it's a stopgap, but you cannot wait till you absorb the poverty problem. These children are growing every day, and you cannot wait. You it's an emergency. You have to save these children, because if you don't, they will become part of the poverty problem. You have 30% of your population that are not productive. They cannot be employed. So really you cannot say we'll solve poverty and then hunger will disappear, because you never will, because these hungry and malnourished children will become your non-productive citizens in the future, and so your economy will never improve. So it has to be tackled now. In other words, malnutrition cannot wait till we solve other problems.
Okay, thank you, Father. And there's more questions, but we'll probably wait until the Q&A for the whole panel. Thank you, Father, for your talk and the video. It's really eye-opening. Okay, so let's move on to our next speaker. And our next speaker is, let's see if I'm sharing the right. Okay, just make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Okay, our next speaker is Mercedes Abad. Mercy Abad. She graduated from the University of the Philippines with a BS in Chemical Engineering and also an MBA from UP Diliman. She started her professional life as a technical researcher in the Metallurgical Advisory Group of the then Philippine Implementation Agency of the Diosdado Macapagal administration. And she made a change in her career and she moved on to Procter & Gamble as project manager in the market research department, where she learned the ABCs of market research. And from then on, Mercy, as she is known in the industry, made a name for herself in the advertising and marketing circles as a reliable and responsible market researcher. She co-founded and managed two major research companies in the Philippines, Consumer Pulse, which was eventually bought by AC Nielsen, and TNS Trends, which eventually became TNS Philippines, and also co-founded the top polling agencies in the country, Social Weather Stations and Pulse Asia. And her clientele belonged to the top 50 companies of the Philippines. And after 42 years of being a research practitioner, Mrs. Abad retired in December 2007 as president of TNS Philippines. And after retirement, Mercy focused on NGO work, and among them Ahon sa Hirap, or ASHI, a microfinance organization targeting the poorest of the poor, where she is currently president. And so I will share.
Members of PAASE and guests, good morning. Meeting Professor Muhammad Yunus the first time is an exhilarating experience. The Nobel Peace Prize winner who formulated the Grameen method firmly believes that one day we can put poverty in a museum, quote unquote. Ahon sa Hirap Incorporated owes inception to Dr. Octavio Generoso, a young professor from UP Los Baños, who in 1989 received a grant that allowed him to visit Professor Yunus in Bangladesh. At that time, Professor Yunus was already gaining popularity for his successful microfinance program among the very poor in their country. Having learned the Grameen methodology from Professor Yunus, Dr. Generoso piloted it in Los Baños. And so, in 2 years' time, ASHI became an NGO. ASHI now takes care of 87,000 members, nanais as we call them, across 9 provinces. You might ask, why just women? If the goals of economic development include improved standard of living, reduction in inequality, and respect for human rights, women should be the primary target. They are the financial managers of the home and hardly ever give up on their children for the future of our country. Other than focusing on women, ASHE does not discriminate against race, ethnicity, or religion. It is able to maintain the indigenous people in several of its centers. We have Domagats and Mangyans among our members. Membership in ASHE is not just about getting a loan. It is also getting a ticket to self-discovery and personal development. ASHE, in fact, does its best to develop all the potentialities of its members. Its mission and vision are as follows: a community of servant leaders guiding marginalized families for social transformation and prosperity. And the mission is, we provide a holistic approach for human and environmental development through microfinance. Let me give you a rundown on how we run our operations. First, we go around looking for potential members. We use a tool called the Poverty Probability Index, or the PPI, which calculates the likelihood that the household is living below the poverty line. ASHE targets those at the lower bottom of the poverty spectrum. We invite potential targets to a meeting where we tell them about ASHE and get to know them better. We weed out those who are already associated with another microfinance to avoid over-indebtedness. The first meetings are very important for motivating and making them shake off their mindsets. For the longest time, they have made themselves believe, or have been made to believe, even by their own parents, that they are hopeless and they will never ever mean anything in their life. The biggest challenge actually is to shatter these oppressive mindsets and make them discover their God-given endowments. During these meetings, we also go out of our way to know and motivate the family, because experience has taught us that a supportive husband and family are one of the key factors of a nanay's success. In one of these sessions, we ask them to group themselves into 5 so that they would seek like-minded applicants who they feel would be more comfortable with. Family members are not allowed to form a group because this is actually the start of expanding their concept of family. The psychological benefit of group membership is immense. Responsible behavior is developed within the group. It is the group as a whole that approves the loan of every member. Thereby, each member would feel morally responsible for every member's loan. When any member of the group gets into trouble, the group normally helps out. Thus, they help each other keep in line with the objectives of the ASHE program. Then, we make them draw their dreams. The more popular dreams that come out are about owning a nice home, sending the children to school, and having enough to eat. We educate prospective clients about ASHE membership. Everything has to be transparent and understood by the applicant, many of whom neither read nor write. All the time, we assure them that ASHE will always be around in support of them. Those selected are assigned to report to a center where they will meet other groups. The rules of engagement are simple. They are to meet with our other members once a week at an appointed time and place. At the start, they meet under the trees or in somebody's house. As the group solidifies, they build a center such as this. It is in these weekly meetings where all monetary transactions are conducted. Part of the agenda is for the development officer in charge of the center to provide education in small doses. The startup loan is only 5,000 or less, depending on the amount the applicant is comfortable with. She also chooses the term of the loan, which can be up to 2 years. The weekly payments are designed so that members should be able to handle the payments without sacrificing their basic quality of life. You will be surprised how getting the first loan overwhelms some of them. To most, it is a milestone in her life. Nobody has ever trusted her with such a big amount. Many would even cry in disbelief that an institution has trusted her. You might think it risky to give them their loan right away, but the point is to immediately explore their potential or to build on skills that they already have. The poor have an innate survival skill. They actually have basic intelligence to see what is good for them. Imagine, given their abject situation, they still have their wits and are very much alive. Many of us would think maybe they should be given a seminar first to learn how to run a small business. Yes, we do that eventually, but we do not delay in making the new member experience soonest the freedom to decide for herself how to proceed in her life in ASHI. Most of the nanays start with small businesses, just buy and sell whatever they can lay their hands on. Others go on into manufacturing, like making bamboo sets, cooking merienda items, making slippers, bags, rugs, soaps, candles, quilts, the works, or even dressmaking. Some go into farming, fishing, poultry, or swine raising. Some provide service like massage, hair, beauty, nail polish, and all that. The small doses of education that the nanays are given every week at the center meetings cover mundane matters like hygiene, sanitation, recipes, health tips, as well as weighty topics like credit discipline, financial tech, client rights and protection, environment and climate change, gender education, which includes parenting, active nonviolence on election year sometimes, how to vote wisely, and many more. These weekly meetings also offer the nanays psychosocial benefits because they are a welcome break from their daily grind. An oasis where the nanay can let go, air her problems to an understanding group, and in general, enjoy the company of fellow nanays. As one nanay exclaimed, hindi lang pala tayo pang kusina lang. We nanays are not just for the kitchen. Actually, it was her first time to dance. So in a few months, you can see grace at work. It's palpable. The first reward of a development officer is to hear nanays say, "We are now eating 3 times a day." By the 4th year of her membership at ASHI, the nanay is usually more financially stable. Through time, with good credit rating, she may loan a bigger amount for the needs of her growing business. The maximum loan possible is 100,000. ASHI Code of Ethics requires that all clients be protected and treated with dignity and respect, even when they fail to meet their contractual commitments. We do not give up on anybody unless they give up on us. If she fails the first time, she is encouraged to try again through what we call a resiliency program to get her back to the highway. She's given another loan at a much lower interest. At ASHI, it is forbidden to subject a borrower to abusive language or threats. It is forbidden to harass anybody at their place of work or worship or at unreasonable times of the day or night. It is also forbidden to enter the borrower's dwelling forcibly and seize property. Thus, we have no need for lawyers. The proof of the pudding is that the method works. Repayment rate is 98% and par is below 5, which is the standard. We have 87,000 success stories to tell. We collected actually 100 of them in a book edited by Dr. Luna Sikat Cleto of UP. I can tell you about Nanay Angie, who when she started lived in a hut which had only 2 walls. When she became an ASHI member, she opened a small store at home while her husband would carry a heavy load of household items on his back to peddle house to house. They were able to send their 4 children to college, 3 of whom are now working abroad and doing very well. Eventually, they were able to build their dream house, according to her, with tiled floors. And there is Nanay Feli in Antique who prides herself with 2 nurses, 2 policemen, and a lawyer. There's Nanay Marilyn who won a Citibank Award for entrepreneurship. She managed a tricycle service with ex-detainees as drivers. And then there's Nanay Laarni, another Citibank awardee, who started with fish fingerlings, was so successful, she was able to open a grocery store. And Nanay Cecil, who established herself as an event photographer in her community to record big family events. And Nanay Adora became a good dressmaker. She was contracted to sew school uniforms. To deliver the order, she turned her whole community into a uniform factory. But to me, the greatest testament to success is the fact that 1/2 of the ASHI management staff are the children of our nanays. All told, 1/3 of the entire 652 ASHI staff are children of our nanays. For funding, Land Bank, Union Bank, and OICO offer uncollateralized loans at lower than market rates. To improve the quality of life of the families, ASHI works with partners like the following. Pure It provides clean drinking water. This has in fact reduced diarrhea in households. Then there's water.org, which enables the supply of clean water and sanitation. For your information, the actor Matt Damon is one of the big supporters of this company. He came here once to visit us and to talk to the nanays. Now, Hybrid Social Solutions provides solar lighting and small solar appliances. And AFI, which is the Ang Fortaleza Foundation, which is a local company, trains our nanays to become beauticians. TESDA trains those who want to learn skills like cooking, baking, massage, and similar other skills. Build Change, whose mission is to help build resilient communities, has made ASHI aware that the homes of our members are not only substandard, but are also often located in precarious locations. No wonder, every time there's a big typhoon, thousands of our member homes are damaged. Of late, after Category 3 Typhoon Tisoy, followed by Typhoon Ursula, more than 10,000 homes were damaged. And more recently, after Typhoon Ambo, more than 5,000 homes in Quezon Province were damaged. Each time such disasters strike, many ASHI members start from scratch all over again. It is estimated that there are still 20 million poor nanays to work on. They represent a huge potential which, when transformed, can turn our country around.
Thank you, Mercy Abad. Let's see, I think we do have time for a few questions. Okay, yeah, so I hope people were able to hear some of that too. I think, yeah, if not, we will send you a link also to the YouTube video so you can listen to that. Yeah. Okay, so I think we can move on, and I'll also I think Mon, if you can put on the on the chat the link to the video also. So if people want to copy that, and then they can watch later on. Okay, so we can move on to the next speaker. And let's see if I can. Share my screen here. Okay, let's see. Let's do that again. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, so our next speaker is Mahar Mangahas. And Dr. Mangahas is a Filipino economist whose research spans rice economics, land reform, poverty, hunger, income inequality, quality of life, governance, and public opinion. He has been an economics professor at the University of the Philippines, a UNICEF social indicators consultant in Malaysia and Indonesia, and the vice president for research of the Development Academy of the Philippines. In 1985, he co-founded and has since headed the Social Weather Stations, a survey research institute that focuses on quality of life, opinion polling, and governance. Among his awards are the 2001 Helen Dinerman Award of the World Association for Public Opinion Research, the 2011 University of Chicago Alumni Award for Public Service, the 2014 Distinguished Research Fellow Award of the International Society for Quality of Life Studies, and the 2015 Distinguished Alumni Award of the University of the Philippines School of Economics. In 2018, Dr. Mangahas was selected as Academician of the National Academy of Science and Technology. And you may be able to read his weekly column, which is in the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and that is called Social Climate. And so with that, let me stop sharing. And so Dr. Mangahas can share his slides.
Good morning. So this is the title of my talk, Service in the Time of COVID. The SWS 2020 mobile phone surveys is a problem that we were not able to continue with our face-to-face surveys for the time being and had to go to mobile phone surveys. Next slide. It's a big problem. Face-to-face is time-tested mode of field work. But this has affected the sampling of the dwellings in the sample spots because we have to, the field workers have to go there and look for dwellings at random. And secondly, interviewing of the designated respondent in the dwelling. These things are directly affected by the pandemic. But they are not the main problem, actually. Next slide, please. The main problem is actually the shutdown of public transport, especially jeepneys and tricycles, and the checkpoints, and the fencing of potential sample respondents. That prevents the accessibility of respondents for surveying. We can't afford public transport for a nationwide survey because that would require going to at least 240 and maybe 300 barangays nationwide. And we don't have the private transportation for that. That's the main problem, actually. Well, secondly is the hazard posed to respondents, which could affect their willingness to participate. So that's potential. Thirdly, would be the hazard posed to the health of the interviewers, which could affect their willingness to work in the field. But actually, I think disruptions 2 and 3 are copable, except we don't know that yet. Next, please. There are already health protocols, actually, that have been designed by the Marketing and Opinion Research Society of the Philippines, MORES, which is the industry association of the profession. This AMOS is Association of Market Research Operations Specialists. Those are associations of interviewers and encoders. There are already protocols to deal with COVID, but we're not able to try them out. Next, please. Would like to show you what's in the protocols for dealing with COVID. There are hygiene, of course, you know this, using the mask and so forth. How to brief in the field, how to recruit your interviewers, practices in the field, where to go, house to house, locating, and so forth. How to deal with immunocompromised segments, how to deal with health professionals in hospitals and health centers. The trouble is that we can't try this out because there's no transportation. That actually is, I think, shooting ourselves in the foot. This excessive lockdown is disrupting data gathering. And I think that that's the biggest problem now. We are anxious to go back to the field, and we think we can do it with those protocols. But we can't do it without jeepneys. Next, please. We have discussed the COVID with our interviewers, and there are some who are afraid to go to the field. But it's not extinguished. We think there will be enough interviewers who are willing to go into the field. We think, of course, that respondents will be less willing to be interviewed, but we think there will be still quite a few who would be willing, especially since we're going to show them that we're using protective devices and we're going to be offering them masks and so forth. But the best way to assess that is to do field testing of face-to-face. Now here's the problem again. We can't even field test face-to-face because of the policy lockdown on public transport. So this, to my mind, is the terrible thing about this is not the COVID itself. This is the government response to the COVID and locking down public transport, and that is affecting data gathering. This is the bad part of it. Next slide is. As I said, the real constraint is the lack of public transport. Now, luckily, until public transport is returned, there is a practical and feasible alternative to face-to-face survey, and that is the mobile phone survey. Next, please. We have been able to do 2 mobile phone surveys so far. These are national surveys. Early May, 4,000 respondents, and then early July, 1,500 respondents. Those are very adequate sample sizes. Our normal sample size with the face-to-face is 1,200. One should be skeptical of opt-in surveys. That's why I put them in quotation marks, because they're not really surveys. They're self-selected respondents. That's when institutions like NEDA, like even the World Bank, invite people to answer a questionnaire. Now, no matter how large the sample, 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, it doesn't matter. If it's not a probability sample, you can't compute the error margin. It's not a scientific survey. It just gives a feeling of, you might say, a little, it's like an aspirin. You think you can cope with it. But those are not surveys. Those are not surveys. Those are not the real one. Those are only quote unquote surveys, and they should be disregarded. Next, please. Now, the disadvantage of a mobile phone survey is that it's oral and it's easy to put down the phone and stop. So it only lasts about 20 minutes. Unlike a face-to-face survey, which normally goes for an hour, and therefore you can ask a lot more questions. So the quantity of data you can get with the mobile phone survey is much less, only 1/3 of what we can get with a face-to-face survey. Now that means researchers had to be very judicious in setting the survey agenda. There's no surplus time for asking, you might say, trivial items. You must be very, very careful and only get the data that's the most important data to get. Next, please. All right, so here's a very specific example. This is hunger. We've done 2 surveys of hunger, and in the first round, we had it coming up, total hunger to 15.8% as of last May, and then 20.9% as of last July. So this is a fantastic rise in hunger during the pandemic. And by the way, there is the history of hunger. You see that there is the hump. I call that the hump of hunger. That's especially from about 2008 up to about 2014. You have a huge hump in hunger, which was luckily going down already in 2015, 16, 17, 18, and that's mainly because of the falling rate of inflation, especially in the cost of food. But that's turned around. Things are so very difficult now with the pandemic. But we wouldn't know this if we didn't do surveys, you see, we'd just be blank. Let me repeat, there's no government data on hunger. This SWS series here is the only quarterly series of hunger, I believe, in the whole world. And it's quarterly, and that's how we can get data on this rapidly. Just go to the website, it's always there. Right? This is one of our complaints, that the government doesn't use its resources appropriately, and its tracking of hunger is very, very slow. It's always years too late. Next, please. Okay, this is another example, and I don't want to spend all of my time on examples, but of course we had to ask what people think about the COVID itself, and here's the very great worry about being infected from COVID. People's worry about COVID is much worse than their worry in the past about Ebola, swine flu, bird flu, and SARS. Every time those infections came around, we asked them in our SWS surveys, and actually those worries, great deal or somewhat worried, those are actually very high compared to the worries of other peoples in the world, because we've been able to compare. So we already know that Filipinos are, by and large, more worried, more nervous people when it comes to illness like that. But this is the worst of all in all of these years since 2003. Next, please. This is pessimism and optimism. You see, we had a very large surplus of optimists over pessimists. That's the green line over the red line. In the past several years, and suddenly, this is as of May, but we will report the July result very soon, maybe by next week. Suddenly, you have pessimism dominating over optimism. 19 points. There's never been such a dominance of pessimism over optimism. So this is one of the most common indicators in the whole world, and it shows you the situation, right? This has to be. We have to continue monitoring this. Next, please. But we have to do many other things too, not just COVID. This is public opinion about the ABS-CBN franchise. 3 out of 4 Filipinos say Congress should renew the ABS-CBN franchise. That was first week of July. That was just before they denied the franchise. Although we were only able to report that actually the day after they denied the franchise, because they denied it on July 11, I think, but we still needed a few days after the fieldwork in order to bring up the data, do the data processing, and to compute it. So you see the unpopularity of the cutting away of the franchise. And you also see 56% saying that non-renewal of the franchise is a blow to press freedom. Of course, we see that the administration has not been paying attention to public opinion, which, well, that's one of the frustrations of doing public opinion research, when you see that the administration does not pay attention. Next. This is another report. It has to do with China. And this was done because we knew very well that the anniversary of the decision of the World Court, well, the arbitral tribunal, the decision in favor of the Philippines, the case against China, that anniversary was on July 12. So this is very pertinent subject for the mobile phone survey. The first 2 items there have to do with China's relevance to COVID itself. And you see, these are all very negative feelings about China. 61% believe that China did not immediately share their information on COVID-19 to the world. And of those who said that, 77% agree that China should be held accountable for it. So this is very much of an anti-Chinese feeling. The lower 2 items there have to do with the West Philippine Sea. 70% agree that the government should assert its territorial rights to the West Philippine Sea. Even more, 82% agree that we should form alliances with other democratic countries that are ready to help defend our territorial rights in the West Philippine Sea. This is not the first time for us to find these results. These have been very consistent over the past 3 years, ever since we won the case in the arbitral tribunal. So this is just a maintenance of anti-China feeling among the Filipino people. China is the least trusted country in the whole world as far as Filipinos are concerned. We also made a release about that. Negative, very negative trust in China. So all of these things are important to keep on monitoring by surveys, not only about COVID itself, but whatever is the most relevant thing that's going on. Next, please. Now, here's the rub. How can this be done? This can only be done if you have a compilation of mobile phone numbers. That is a probability that is probability based. Now this is foresight foresight, SWS had been compiling mobile phone numbers since 2017. From 2017 to 2019, when they had been doing our face-to-face probability surveys, we asked the respondents if they would permit us to re-interview them on their mobile phones. So they gave us their mobile phone numbers. And we were able to compile 31,000 mobile phone numbers from all over the country from these face-to-face surveys. We did this gradually, survey after survey, to prepare for times when we may want to survey my mobile phone mode. Right? So this is very fortuitous, right? Because there's really no easy source for mobile phone numbers. And the telcos are telling us that they're worried about the Privacy Act, and so they're resisting cooperating with providing mobile phone numbers. But luckily, we did it already, right? Next slide, please. So we know where these numbers are. They're from all over the country. Here they are. They're spread in all the regions. There are more in NCR, 7,000, because we do more surveys in NCR. And there are also more in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. And that's because we've been doing special surveys in Bangsamoro. On account of the issue in Bangsamoro, we've got quite a number of commissions to survey there. And so we had a lot of numbers from over there. And so we sample here now from each region, region by region. But of course, when we put them together, we only weight them in accordance to what is the population weight for that particular region. Not in accordance to how many numbers we got, but in accordance to their population weight from the census data. Next, please. So we got 4,000 in May, and we got 1,500 in July. Actually, May was a little bit too large. We overdid it, I think, but we were just worried that we might not get enough. So we kept on calling for a longer period. We called for 7 days. And actually, we were hoping to get 300 at least for Metro Manila, and we got 294, which is about right. In July, we got, when we got 1,500, then we got, as you see there, 300 in Metro Manila, 450 in the balance Luzon, and so forth. Those are very, very adequate. In our quarterly surveys, when we do 1,200, it's 300 in Metro Manila, 300 in the balance of Luzon, 300 in the Visayas, and 300 in Mindanao. You use these knowing that they are probability samples, and you just apply the proper error margin. That would be plus or minus 6% for the 4 areas, and plus or minus 3% for the nation as a whole. And then you analyze accordingly. You don't exaggerate. You know, if something is within the error margin, you don't call it significant. Right. Next, please. So, for both mobile phone surveys, when you get the data, we weight them using census weights. 13% for NCR, 45% for balance of Luzon, 19% for the Visayas, and 23% for Mindanao, because that's as it should be. We also weight by gender, 50% each, male and female. Right? That's to make sure that we get an even distribution by gender. Because if we just leave it up to what we got, well, as a matter of fact, we get 60% female respondents and only 40% male respondents. Women are more accommodating. So that's just something we learned. They're more accommodating, and we thank them for that. But just the same, when we put the data together, in every area, we make sure that there are half males and half females in weight. Okay? We use all the data, but we weight them equally. That's the way to go about it. Next, please. Now, unweighted, suppose we don't have the weight. We look at the ages and we look at their educational levels, and these are what we actually got without any weights, which is very, very reasonable. For the May survey, we have an age group there, 15 to 17, because at that time, we decided to take respondents from age 15 because age 15 is the legal working age, and we had questions that had to do with work. But as a matter of fact, we only got 1% responses from that age group of 15 to 17. Now, the distributions, as you would see, are very, very almost identical between May and July, even though these are not the same people. Huh? This is not the same respondents in May and July, but they came from the same compilation, all right? They came from the same compilation, so they have very similar characteristics for the two compilations. If you were to ask me, I would say maybe we have too few non-elementary graduates, a little bit, but not so much. And for college graduates, that's correct. Only about 17% college graduates. The bulk are really there just above high school. And by high school, we mean junior high school. We mean junior high school. The elementary graduates, there are finished elementary and maybe a little high school, but did not finish junior high school. Now, this educational distribution is our proxy for socioeconomic class. We cannot have socioeconomic class data because that in an ordinary face-to-face, that depends on a visual judgment of the home and the appliances in the home, and it's done by the field interviewers. But on a mobile phone, you can't see the home, so there's no socioeconomic classification of the same style. We use education instead. Another thing that we were not able to continue is the self-rated poverty, because the self-rated poverty requires a visual aid. It requires showing the respondents a card with two words, mahirap and hindi mahirap. That's, of course, that's a very, very simple visual aid, but we can't reproduce that when we're interviewing over the telephone. And so we have not been able to continue the self-rated poverty series in 2020 for the meantime. But we were able to continue the hunger because that's only done verbally, all right? That's done verbally. There are chats coming in, but I can't answer them right away. Right? I'll try to answer them later on, okay? Next, please. Next slide, please. All right. Now, what's the problem in surveying my mobile phone? This most problem is actually the telecom barriers, all right? You can't be unable to reach the number, all right? Maybe they're not working, out of order, and you get these other messages. It's incorrect, out of coverage area, cannot reach them, cannot be completed as dialed, and so forth, right? So these may be temporary or they may be permanent. We don't know, right? Maybe they'll come back again. Maybe they were just off for a while. But to cope with these, we need replenishment, and we'll need some cooperation. We're trying to look for more numbers on a probability base. That's the big problem. And I hope that someday the telcos will cooperate with us. There are other problems which are not telecom problems. They are problems with the respondent side, like ringing but not answered. The number's always busy. Sometimes it's hung up. But these are just counterparts in the face-to-face mode. These are only counterparts to dwellings which are unoccupied or unresponsive to the door knocking by house-to-house interviewers. You can't blame the respondents if they're not home, all right? You can come back later or call again later, but these are normal. Nobody home, that's normal. That's the same as in face-to-face surveys. You just have to put up with it. You just have to be patient. That's why you need to have a base from which to sample. Next. Now, outright refusals, when you actually get somebody on the telephone, you ask them if they would like to cooperate and then you get a refusal, those are actually few. And I think it's due to our good reputation and that people are willing, most people are willing to cooperate and answer the questions. Actually, in our face-to-face, we get lots of people who are so overjoyed that they have been sampled and that they are willing to share their opinions in a public opinion poll. If they know that it's a real McCoy opinion poll and it's not an attempt to sell them anything. Right? That's part of the ethics of opinion polling. You don't try to sell them anything. All right. If you do that, you're not an opinion pollster anymore. You're a marketer, right? And that's a different occupation already. Next, please. Right. Now, how do we test this? Right? Because in science, you need validation. This is what we insist on. We want everybody to try it also, independently, validate it. If you can do face-to-face, why not? But you'll be met by the transportation problem. If you have a telephone probability sample, go ahead and do that. In fact, the telcos should do it if they can. Why not? And that's the way whereby you can validate whether what we're doing is correct, and we challenge that, actually. There should be more. There should be more. We're not saying, that we must be correct, but we try to do it properly, and this is what we get. And we're waiting for others to see if they can deny getting the same results if they do it the same way. And then last slide here. Now, and if you've done it well, don't forget to archive your survey data because you'll be needing this over and over again. If it's first-class data, then it should be archived. Okay? That's what we encourage to everybody. In our data bank, we have already 1 million interviews in the past 35 years. And we go back to these again and again for more analysis. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Dr. Mangahas. That was really, really interesting. And there are a few questions
Yes.
on the chat.
I'll look at them again.
And maybe I can summarize some. There's a few that point to, I guess, the methodology, which I think you spent a lot of time on, and that has to do with, the sampling. Thank you, Mon. Yeah. And how do you make sure the sampling is representative? I guess related to that would be the 31,000. Would that be enough?
Well, those were originally probability sample. So that's our justification for using them, and then visited face-to-face. Now, question framing, they are in our website. When we make our reports, we put the exact question there in Filipino, and you can look it up, right? The results shows that the government does not encourage. That's true. That's true. That's true. Yes, the 31,000 were randomly selected because they went through our original random selection face-to-face in those earlier years. Doctor, what is the probability of one Filipino being a respondent in his or her lifetime? I think we've asked that you know, and I think it's 5 to 10% probability of being surveyed at any time in your entire life. As I said, we've got 1 million interviews in our data bank in 35 years of surveying. Now, 1 million out of 100 million present. Well, not 100 million, because we don't interview children most of the time. It's not more like 55 to 60 million adults.
So maybe something like 2%, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there's another
thank you,
question here
Astrid.
from.
Any more questions?
There's a
After
question,
Astrid.
Dr. here from Edsel Peña, Dr. Peña, and he says, "Thank you, Dr. Mangahas. The pool of 30,000 plus mobile phone respondents may be a biased sample to begin with, since they are the people with mobile phones. Is there
No,
a
they're
way
not.
to see
They
the
are the
amount?"
people that we surveyed originally, not with mobile phones, but you know, mobile phones are now held by 85 to 90% of the people. Almost everybody has a mobile phone. So it's a very good way of sampling now. So we didn't
And then one
select
question
only
from-
people who had mobile phone. We selected from the people we had sampled in their homes, and then we asked them if we could re-interview them on their mobile phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that clarifies. Yeah. One question from Christy Galliano. Are respondents paid?
No, they're never paid. Sometimes we are given enough budget in order to give them a little token, like a notebook, something like that. You know, it's a kind of a thank you. But that's rare. That's done for big surveys where we've got them for an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's a kind of a little thank you. But there's definitely no money. There's at most a notebook, a face towel. Those are the only kinds of tokens that we give. We're not like the market research where they give free samples of consumer goods. No, that's a lot more. No, we don't do that. For them, it's really the pleasure of being civic-minded and contributing to the survey. And so we're very thankful, of course, to those who participate. Now, if they don't want to participate at all because they're too busy, well, we can't do anything about that. That's like in a democracy, you know. If you choose not to vote, you're not required to vote, but then you will not be counted. See, what can you do about that? And you have to live with that.
Yeah. Well, let's thank Dr. Mangahas for his talk, and we'll have also more questions and more time after all the talks for our panelists. So please, for the audience, keep typing away in the chat, and keep asking your questions, and we'll have time to get to your questions. Okay, so we've had an interesting mix of talks so far. With Father Ben, we're talking about child malnutrition and hunger in the Philippines. With Mrs. Mercy Abad, we were talking about microfinance for the poor and lots of success stories. And then with Dr. Mangahas, he just talked about surveys and how to do them, and what does it tell us about the Filipino people and what they're feeling about certain things, certain issues in this particular time of COVID. We'll sort of pivot a little bit and talk about heritage in local communities. And our next speaker is Dr. Mario Santo Domingo. So let's see if I can share this slide. And Dr. Santo Domingo is a professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He's also a research program coordinator in the psychology department, and he's also a research scientist with Evaluation and Assessment Solutions LLC. He did his PhD in Community and Applied Social Psychology at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And he did several master's degrees in International University of Japan, University of the Philippines, and I believe also Johns Hopkins University. With that, I'll stop sharing, and then you can go ahead and share your screen, Dr. Sandra Domingo.
Can you see my screen now, Francis?
Yes.
Okay, magandang umaga po sa mga nasa Pilipinas at magandang gabi sa mga nasa Amerika at Canada at kung saan man kayo naroon. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. First of all, I'd like to thank President Giselle Concepcion of PAASE and Francis, the host of our session today, for this opportunity to talk about a topic that's really very close to my heart. So I'm here this morning to talk about a community-based history and heritage project not far from Manila, in the province of Rizal, in the small town of Morong, where I was born and raised. But let me first dedicate this talk to a few people who have inspired and helped make this project a reality. The late Colonel Francisco San Miguel, who was persistent in his call for the town and the former district of Morong to be recognized for its role in the history of the Philippine Revolution and for the formation of the Philippine nation. The late Mayor Armando San Juan, who never hesitated to support this project the moment he sat in office and provided staff support contributing to the sustainability of the museum. They both passed away several weeks ago, not too long ago. Also to late Maclary San Antonio, who was a staff at the National Museum. He knocked on doors at the National Museum when this project was being conceptualized to bring the weight of the national institution to a local museum project. And last but not the least, to my dear friend and classmate, Attorney Lynn Bautista, who passed away 2 nights ago.
Wow.
Attorney Lynn provided us legal advice regarding property rights and agreements between the government and civic organization. Thank you as well to the officials of LIKAS Morong, whose main project was the Museong Pambayan ng Morong, led by Vice President Felino Angeles, for steering the museum to where it is right now. Special shout out to Friends of Morong Museum, led by Mrs. Normita Fan, and to the Mayor of Morong, Dr. Olivia De Leon. The biggest gratitude goes to the members and staff who worked hard to run the museum and sustain its programs. It goes without saying, though, that due to the current pandemic and the closure of the museum, both our educational and social activities are limited to online mode, which I'll repeat again later. This story began in the small town of Morong, in the eastern part of Rizal by the Laguna de Bay. The town may be better known for its beautiful neo-Baroque church, which traced its history as far back as 1615, but whose facade was completed in 1853. At the entrance of the church complex were 2 foo dogs, or stone lions. Just like the church, they have been constant presence. We see those 2 foo dogs every day since I was a child. But something happened not quite long ago. One stormy day, the female foo dog disappeared, never to be seen again, leaving the other foo dog, the male one, by its lonesome. But this has happened before. This loss of a community patrimony has happened before. It was not the first time. By theft or by official decision. It has happened before, like the structure called Glorieta, built in the 1920s, which gave way to a basketball court in the 70s. Now, is it happening still? Yes, probably not as massive, as the whole structure being taken away at one point in time. But many structures, many architectural edifices are being chipped away slowly. So what's happening again? So these are losses or damages to local architectural and material or tangible heritage. But then this is not the only heritage I'll be talking about today. There's also the obliteration of local intangible heritage. A large part of our heritage actually is immaterial, such as history, tradition, and way of life. And why? Why are this happening? And I can just point to a few reasons. One is like misguided development, the pressure to modernize for the locals, and also related to the influx of capital, both to private sectors, both to the public sector. The inability of local institutions such as the local government, the schools, the churches to preserve this tangible and intangible heritage. Also related to this is the lack of understanding and appreciation of local history and the relevance of heritage. And finally on this list, the erosion of citizen initiatives due to top-down governance and paternalistic structures. All this despite the presence of national edicts or laws that actually encourages the preservation, enrichment, and dynamic evolution of a Filipino national culture according to Section 14 of the Philippine Constitution. Related to this and actually following this article is the National Cultural Heritage Act signed in 2009 by President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, providing for the protection and conservation of the national cultural heritage, strengthening the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, or NCCA, and its affiliated cultural agencies, and for other purposes. So what can we do on the ground? So there's this infrastructure above on the national level and possibly on regional levels. I've listed here at least 9 of those items that we can do, and we actually tried doing in Morong. Of course, it's very important. We can mobilize the citizens and encourage participation in heritage work. 2, part of the mobilization and encouragement to participate is education and training. Next is fundraising and grant making, something that I didn't learn from school. 4th, development of communication strategies and seeking allyship with media. Wait, I think I lost my screen. Oops. Next is policy advocacy. Very important as well is the networking with, of course, the government, organizations in the community. And I added here both horizontal and vertical integration, okay? The LIKAS Morong networked with the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, also with the Southern Luzon Association of Museums. And it's very important, part of networking is networking at the bottom. You know, we've been trying to integrate those at the margins of the community, those who are at the periphery, both socially, economically, and geographically. Only when these six are accomplished can we be confident that, okay, probably we can continue doing knowledge production and promotion of local history. But of course, these are not linear. You know, this can happen at the same time. Of course, the preservation, maintenance, and curation of common heritage, and if possible, you know, influencing the schools in the development of local curricula and program development. Now, what we did was to create a twin, okay, a dual alternative settings. First, we created the Lipunang Pagkasaysayan ng Morong, which is the historical society, because it's only when we have this social organization can we push for the creation or establishment of a museum, which then we didn't know what form it will take or where it will be located. But it didn't happen overnight. The idea of forming a historical society has been percolating, you know, since about 15 years ago in 2005 or even earlier. So we developed these brochures trying to recruit people, but many of, or most of the efforts fizzled out until the year 2010, when Facebook groups were launched. You know, it has become easier and swifter to communicate with people and to find people of the same mind, those who believe in the same ideals that I believe and my other allies believe about the understanding of history and the preservation of heritage. We gathered a small group of people in the beginning who communicated and tried to brainstorm about what courses of action to take. And we zeroed in on what we call the Comandancia. You saw this photo a while back. This has been at the center of the town and was built in 1880 through 1881. I considered it a palimpsest of local and regional history because it's similar to a manuscript whose old writing has been effaced or altered, but the remnants of the original form still remains. This is very historical. This was where Teodoro Plata of KKK was a clerk of court, and he spied against the Spaniards for the Katipunan. But there's a problem. Look at how it was in 2012 through the early part of 2013. It was abandoned because the local government found or established a new seat of government by the outskirts of the town. It was decrepit, it was dirty. So it's not ours, it's not, it's a government property. What to do? How do we make it, you know? How do we occupy it? How do we make it into a museum? And so the decision was to clean it, okay? It's not ours, but probably we can do something. We can transform it. And it happened. It got cleaned. Again, the question is, so what? What to do? Where do we go from here? So because of the realization that actually we could do something, we can actually make space clean, we started mobilizing, actually recruiting a more members and try to communicate with the local government, with the mayor, that, hey, can we please make use of that space to make it into a museum? So there was this effort, to slowly convince the municipal government that it's worth bequeathing or making the LIKAS Morong the steward of that space. So part of this mobilization is attending meetings, and I apologize if you will be seeing my face, my picture in some of these photos, because I was at the center of the action. So you can see here a meeting with the town mayor then, Mayor Joseph Benaventura, was meeting with Balikbayans, and we asked him pointedly, if Mayor, do you think you can make LIKAS Morong, who were attending this meeting, the steward of the second floor of the Comandancia so that we can transform it into a museum? He did not say yes, but he did not say no either. So we took it to mean that probably it's okay. So we continued our work on the Comandancia. So with our local artists, with the artisans of the community, we transformed it into something pleasant, something beautiful, so we can actually create or stage a small exhibit, so that when we inaugurate the Lipunang Pangkasaysayan ng Morong, there's something that people can see. So with the help of the local community, we started putting displays on that space on the second floor. So people offered displays, their bonsai plants, their pots, their potteries, the old bell from the school, and other artifacts or paintings that people were storing in their garages. So it was really quite exhilarating that people get it. People think that this is an important effort. And so there was a massive cooperation on the part of the people. So we set the inauguration of the Lipunang Pangkasaysayan ng Morong on April 5, 2013, and had a small exhibit. So people came. We even invited like a cantor from the Aglipayan Church to sing for us. And as you can see, although this is a small photo at the lower right-hand quartile, of this slide, you can see the chair of the National Historical Commission, Dr. Marish Jokno, who was then the chair, whom we were able to invite to grace the occasion, and also a representative from the National Museum, because we thought that there has to be a national presence in this local event so that people will see that this is a legitimate initiative. So these are just examples of the displays then, arts, heroes, artifacts, and food. We also launched a Gawad Kasaysayan and other types of awards. In this case, this was the first couple of awardees, the co-authors of Morong 400 Years book, published in 1978 by Timoteo Pascual and Liwayway Pascual Guillermo. From then on, we launched other awards like Youth Leadership Award, Award for Cultural Workers, an award for philanthropists. And then this happened. We signed the Memorandum of Agreement on the same day in public. So the mayor eventually relented to us being the stewards of that space in the building although later on we realized that memorandum of agreement do not have teeth really. And so from here on, we tried moving toward the passing of an ordinance or a law, a local ordinance that will actually make sure that we, or the LIKAS Morong, is the legally, designated steward of the space. So from then on, again, as I've said, we moved forward. The museum left its mark on the community. We even created our own preamble, as you can see here. This is on display in the museum, on the entrance of the museum. And then we decided, okay, probably we can actually use the whole space. Because we were using only a small space, since we were already there, we might as well plan for the actual, the use of the whole space for it to become a formal museum. And then we did it. We did the plan, we worked toward it, we raised funds for it until this happened. From the decrepit, dirty, space, we transformed it into something beautiful, made by the locals. So the design artists were locals, the artisans were locals, the carpenters were locals. So these are all locally produced. As you can see here, it was visited by Dr. Gisela Concepcion, during the day that we launched a science-related effort at the University of Rizal system. It was also discovered by one other PAASE member, Dr. Maria Corazon de Ungria, who actually wrote me a letter saying that she would like to be part of the Morong project. Why? Because she traced her roots to Morong. And so I thought, oh, maybe we can invite Cora to be a resource speaker in one juntahan. And the juntahan was about family trees. So she talked about her work in genetics, and it was so, it was received so well because it ties into what we were really aiming for, to be able to trace our roots, to be able to connect, with our families. And she herself was able to draw her family tree and met her relatives during this particular event. Professor Vincent Christopher Santiago, who's a linguist, also traced his roots back to Morong. It happened that he earlier had some studies on the lexicon of the Morong Tagalog dialect. So he found a way, we actually invited him to talk about his research about Usap Morong or the Morong Tagalog dialect. So as you can see here are some additional photos. So we, of course, developed the gallery. And from 2013 on, there have been like 3 or 4 art exhibits or exhibits of human interest on the gallery. We've have like a schedule of events, not just art exhibits, but also storytelling and storytelling workshops for children, for example. All Women Art Show is another event on this particular list. We also have received group tours from schools in Morong and adjacent towns, also groups of visitors from Metro Manila and adjacent provinces. Now, I listed here the program components that we thought were really very important at the beginning of the initiative, and still is very, very, very important. One is the critical mass of members who are well aware of the importance of history and heritage in the well-being of the community. The importance of a sustained program for educating and training members. so that skills like technical skills or social skills are being fostered and instilled for the benefit of the organization and for the benefit of the larger community. A sustained set of interactive activities and events, which we thought should be first inclusive, that it has to accommodate everyone in the community, including those at the margins, including the handicapped, including girls and women. So, you know, one picture here was taken during the opening of an art exhibit by girls and women. And of course, we have a lot of activities for children, because we believe that any museum project which seeks to empower should have a developmental component. Very, very important is local policy advocacy. So we started with a memorandum of agreement. Actually, after the 2013 signing of the memorandum of agreement, we had another signing in 2015 when the formal opening of the actual museum happened. And then in May of 2018, after a series of mobilizations and advocacy, the ordinance, the municipal ordinance, which is a binding ordinance, was approved on the third reading by the Sangguniang Bayan of Morong. So it was a successful effort brought about by consistent, mobilization and the persistent knocking on the doors of the politicians. Now, of course, we continue to touch base with the local government unit. In fact, in May 2019, the first woman town mayor was elected, Dr. Olivia De Leon, and this shows the ceremony where we were hanging, her portrait on the wall, where the portraits of mayors of the town since the turn of the 20th century were hanging. We thought that this is a nice way of showing the public that we cherish, we treasure our leaders, and that the young ones or the younger set will see that, oh, if I become a mayor, my portrait will be hanging here. This is an important space in the life of the town. Another important program component is the development of local and external networks. LIKAS Morong became a founding member of the Local Historical Committees Network, or LHCN, under the auspices of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. So it was very timely, because we were founded, or we inaugurated our organization at the time that the LHCN was forming. So we became a founding member. We are also an active member of the Southern Luzon Association of Museums. As you can see here, there are several historical societies around the area. And so we have been connecting with them. A very important development too is the formation of the Friends of Morong Museum. So these are residents or Morongeños who are abroad who thought that the best way they can help the museum and the town is to form an organization that will help support, the museum for a long time. So they've been accepting fees, and then they are giving us small grants for occasional projects. Publications, this has been a very important component too. We have actually published 4 books, 2 on oral history, 1 on culinary tradition of Morong, and 1 on Morong literature. So this has been a source of revenue for the museum. Also, media allyship. This is very important. We have actually formed a relationship with certain media practitioners and also broadcast media practitioners. You can see here Mr. Edric Calma from WOW Philippines. He's actually from Morong, and then he's already featured the town and the museum in his show. Also, we were able to actually released our positions about certain heritage issues through the media, and that was really effective. Finally, but not the least important, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is fundraising and grant making. So far, we have been doing annual fundraising through this for activities like direct solicitation, concerts or art shows, small grants, and book or merchandise sales. So far, since 2013, about 2/3 of our revenues are coming from donations. So donations actually from abroad, but about 61 to 90% are donations from everywhere. And that's because some of our revenues are actually coming from the other activities. Okay, so if you happen to be in Morong and you come to the museum, feel free to buy some of our merchandise, as you can see here. So the good news is that on November 27, 2019, the Museong Pambayan ng Morong received the news that its grant proposal to enhance the museum was approved by the NCCA. So this is the first time that we got a big grant. And quite recently, just a few days ago, NACP and the Local Historical Committees Network told us that they will support the annual forum on the history and heritage of Rizal Province on August 30th. Actually, this particular activity is one step toward upscaling because we wanted to integrate the other towns in our efforts and try to have like a forum where everyone will say their piece about their own local history and their own heritage. So hopefully it will be successful and that it will lead to even bigger projects, not just for the town, but for the province itself. So this is actually the end of my presentation, but I just would like to show you these two photos. Originally, I'm actually a community psychologist, so I'm very much interested in community well-being, collective well-being, and maybe this is for a future talk about how museum visits can actually foster or help people, you know, in enhancing their mental health and well-being. So as I said, like this can be for a future presentation. And at this point, I'd like to thank everyone who listened to this presentation, of course, to everyone who's contributed to this our sets of photographs. And I'd like to thank you, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them. Okay. Salamat po.
Thank you, Mario. Really, really inspiring talk, and congratulations on your efforts.
Salamat.
Yeah. So I actually have a question for you, Mario, and and I think the question might resonate with some of our members who are also, you know, U.S. based and you know, go back to the Philippines regularly. But it seems like you have a special connection to Morong. And how did you maintain that connection, even though, you know, you're working from abroad?
Oh, so as I've said during my talk, you know, Facebook was really very instrumental, very helpful, especially Facebook group, because we have this group that started really, really small. And we were constantly, sharing ideas through that particular venue. But Morong is really a small town. We know almost everyone from school, and so there is really a very, very tight social fabric that and that's why when we did the first fundraising, it was very successful because everyone, was connecting with each other and convincing everyone that this is a worthy endeavor. In addition, actually, although I've noticed that when I did some analysis of the funds raised and the amount, the closer you are to the museum, the more frequent, you donate, and the higher, the amount of donation. So probably because of the affect, because of the connection with the place and the space and the people that are around that area. But I've always been insisting that we need to be able to accommodate those far away from the center, because only then can we really have, a strong community that's inclusive and that will be learning from our efforts. Otherwise, it would just be, like preaching to the choir, if we keep on just talking to one another who already know each other. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. So now we can open, to the floor to questions, and we do have some questions on chat, and you can keep asking and typing away. But I think it's also possible to have people ask questions. You can turn your mic on and ask questions. So what we'll do is probably, if you have a question, maybe use the icons to raise your hand, and I'll acknowledge you, and then we can have you ask your questions live. You still have all our panelists here. Actually, before we go to those questions, maybe I'd like to ask Mercy Abad. We did present the video, and I understand there were some audio issues for the video. It was nice and clear on my end, but I thought it was transmitting well. But there is a link that Richmond posted, so everybody can click on that later on and copy it and watch it on YouTube. But I had a question for Mercy about ASHI, just in terms of the model, which we know is the microfinance model. Essentially, you're giving out loans to poor families, primarily to the nanays, to the women. One question is, you said that the maximum amount was 100,000 pesos, and I guess that's after several years of success. But initially, what was your what's the typical loan amount that you give out to the nanays? That's one question. And then can you comment on the nanays being the ones receiving the loans and running the businesses as opposed to the tatays?
Yeah. Actually, we give 5,000 for the first loan, but some of them find it too big and too daring, so they prefer a smaller amount. And then we make sure that the payment per week is not going to affect their quality of life. Now, why the nanays, not the tatays? Because really, it's more than just giving a loan. Microfinance is more than just giving a loan. It's also liberating the person from the prisons that's holding them now. So who best to free but the nanays for the financial handlers of our homes and who take care of children. As Father Nebres said, the children are the future of our country. So we really concentrate on the nanays. And you can see that that is that's a wealth that our country has not mined yet, no? The women force, the talent of the women, and their functional competence. It's really amazing. I'm amazed at what they have shown us.
And
But
just
actually,
to
but actually we're already starting to work with farmers now, because the men started complaining, why the nanays only? So we're now starting to work with small-time farmers and putting them together so that we can go over the middlemen and we go directly to the big business people who will take care of the farmers. That's another story, so I did not talk about it anymore. I just concentrated on the nanays.
Thank you, Mercy. There's a few more questions that we'll go through on the chat. But like I said, I think there's really a chance for us to be more directly involved. So if you want to raise your hand and ask a question of our panelists, please go ahead and do that, and I'll acknowledge you. So one question, this is for Father Ben from Al Serafika. Very excellent work, Father Ben. How can we make the operation more sustainable by using more technology? For example, urban vertical farming, and having income generating aspects like extending services of the cocina to serve paying customers, like the parents, that will sustain the operation of feeding the children. More power to you and GK.
Well, we do use technology. We have a team in Ateneo, Manila, led by Dr. Eden Bureau, which are basically we use cell phones to gather data so that in all the kitchens they can input both the data of the feeding, but also the data about the children. And we use that to analyze things. That's about the use of technology. But as far as urban farming, that's really more middle class. The very poorest are not into that at all. So that reaches certain groups, but it's not at the level for the very poorest that we deal with. Because Gawad Kalinga is very focused very much on the poorest. Shall I from Mayor Tolosa? Gawad Kalinga is not a Catholic organization. It comes from Couples for Christ, which was a Catholic organization. But Gawad Kalinga now is basically an organization to serve the poor. And a lot of our work right now is in Muslim areas. My main concern right now is Marawi and Lanao del Sur. Just this morning, I was connecting with the DepEd Marawi because we just supplied face shields for them. So Gawad Kalinga is really an organization right now that is focused on poverty, and it is no longer part of Couples for Christ, which was a Catholic organization. And about family planning, we work with our communities. We work with the government in this area.
Thank you, Father Ben. I guess while we still have you, one question from Dr. Subade. Now that feeding the poor children is a government program, how is this being done? And is there any coordination or collaboration between GK and the government? And I don't know if that means local government, is what you explained, or
the government mode is basically through the Department of Education. The funds go to DepEd Central, and then they're dispersed to the divisions and down to the schools. So that's the default mode. It's the school that implements. But the problem, the problem with that default mode of the government is that then the principal and the teachers are burdened with handling the school feeding. And so it actually affects their teaching and their other work. And that's why Gawad Kalinga has worked with, as well as Ateneo and the Olivi Foundation. We've tried to get the LGUs involved, the mayor involved. and so that we can organize volunteers and so on, so that we free the teachers from having to tackle cooking and serving, aside to the many other duties. So we try our best to work with that, and that's the way Gawad Kalinga works with we work with the mayors, basically. We try to work with the mayors and the Department of Education for that. The challenge we face right now is in the pandemic is that how to reach the children, and that's the challenge that we face. And right now, DepEd is finalizing the mode, and we're hoping that DepEd has decided to go with food packs, and we're trying to see how to help them with that. So like GK is volunteering to set up a system for delivery of food packs.
Thank you, Father Ben. And just
And
full
about family
disclosure.
planning education, GK is not into that, but we do cooperate with the government if needed in this area.
Thank you, Father Ben. I think this is Abad. Mercy, you want to comment also on that?
On family planning, yeah.
Yeah.
The sad part really is the very poor cannot afford to buy condoms or even maintain pills. The government must provide those. So, like for example, we've taught them natural family planning, the method being taught by Bishop Ledesma with the use of parang rosary beads, no? So they can count, they don't have to look at the calendar. But that works only if the husband is regularly at home. If the husband comes home once every week or once every month, it does not work. So it has to be a government initiative if we are serious about family planning. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think we need all the input, especially people working on the ground and understanding the issues. I have a question for Dr. Mangahas. I think Edsel Peña was also asking about this, about government and certain administrations. You've been around for many administrations since the 80s. And it seems like some administrations use the data, or at least listen to the data, or listen to you, and some administrations don't. I guess the question is, do you have any examples of cases that very clearly the government looked at the data that SWS was putting out and made a policy shift or some government action, which then changed the results of the surveys? In other words, a before and after that was clearly because of the government listening to SWS and using the data.
I still have to think, we're happy already if we're listened to, but we don't keep count of changes. We can't say we're responsible for any particular changes. I'm very happy people say they're worried about hunger. That's okay. We're looking at that, but then I said, so why doesn't the Philippine Statistical Authority get into the act and start doing it also? Why is everybody depending on us to do it? You see, mm-hmm. I think that everyone should get into it and not kind of take us for granted that we're going to be doing it all the time. Well, we feel that if we can't stop it, of course, if we must continue. But there are many things that everybody should get involved in, so that there will be more research, and not expecting us to do it all.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mangahas. Okay, I think Giselle. Please go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, I'll ask a question to each of our outstanding eminent speakers. Thank you so much for joining us today. Father Ben, we are aware that moringa is a high nutrition diet source of our macro and micronutrients. One of our NAST corresponding members, Enrique Estrella, had done a study in Malabon on the correlation between moringa feeding of infants to toddlers or school children in relation to the intellectual development. So Dr. Estrella is with Wayne State, and he's a pediatrician in research. So are you privy to this information, and is there a way for you to conduct such studies directly correlating the physical and mental development of the children? Okay. Second, to Dr. Mangahas, I'd like to know what's the difference in the methods and the thrusts for the surveys used by the PAASE and SWS, and to reiterate the question of whether you think it is your responsibility to advise government on how to address the issues, the political ones, the very important one today that you mentioned. Okay? Why is it that we get these sentiments from the people regarding WPS, and yet we get pronouncements or we get signals from our national leaders that they're now going to try to uphold the thinking or the position of our people. To Mercy Abad, may I ask whether microfinancing might be used to support directly the upgrading of skills and the training of the nanays, so that the income generation would have it would be better. Also, might you consider microfinancing for, say, their children to go into vocational training? So what I'm trying to emphasize here is the ripple effect of training and education, so that rather than just setting up a grocery, or of course we know pananahian is also important, there could be some other ways of improving productivity. And finally, to Mario. So I'm a witness to what Mario has established in Morong, and that's why I wanted to set up this Balik Ka sa Bayan Mo Tayo Na program, precisely because I saw what Mario has done in Morong. Now, Mario, maybe you can share with us also what you're trying to do with the University of Rizal system as an academic institution to help you with your vision and your advocacy, okay? To instill pride in our history and our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. Okay, so that's several questions for all our panelists. So let me see if we can go in order. So to Father Ben, I guess the question was in terms of moringa and some of these nutritional studies, is it possible to do those studies at these sites that you're working into? Are you aware of those studies, and are you doing research? I think that was the question for you.
Well, I'm aware of the studies on moringa, but I'm not myself involved in it, and I appreciate very much my continuing discussion with Dr. Giselle on it. But from the very beginning of the school feeding programs, we always use moringa. From the time we started around early 2000s with this, because we really believe it helps. In fact, the concern we have right now is that despite the fact that moringa really is important for nutrition, in general, the Filipino population does not put a priority on planting malunggay trees. No? In fact, in some places, they cut them down. So maybe, I don't know how we could have an advocacy where we could really tell people that they should plant malunggay trees, and that it really is a very, it's a plant that can provide so much for them, not just the leaves, but the fruit and other things. So maybe that's the need we have right now, is to make it more widespread. I think India is much more into moringa than we are. That's what I understand.
And I think the second question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
May I just add one other thing? Our understanding of poverty in the Philippines, at least our policymakers, we think of poverty as basically economic. In other words, lack of jobs, lack of opportunities, lack of money. But in the work I've been trying to do on poverty, I've come to understand what Amartya Sen, a Nobel Prize winner, says, that deeper than economic poverty is what he calls a poverty of capability. And he says what gives capability is education and health. And the best way to understand this is that we may have all these foreign direct investments, and we may all invite good firms to come in here. But if you invite somebody to come to work and he has tuberculosis or walang pinag-aralan, it will not work. And that's why attending to education of our children and attending to their health is very central to getting out of poverty. Otherwise, we can try to put up factories, jobs, new technologies, but we don't have the people with the capability. So I hope we understand that we have to attend to this problem.
Yeah, thank you, Father. I guess the next question was for Dr. Mangahas. Giselle was asking about, again, your stance on the responsibility of SWS. I think that was what I got from her question. I don't know if you can recall the other finer points of her question.
Well, thanks, Francis. I have the floor now. I wanted to say three things. First of all, I want to commend Mercy Abad in general, because she's a great pioneer in survey research of all kinds, market research, opinion research, and so forth. No? So many of us have learned from Mercy Abad up to now. Okay, and the face-to-face is really the best type of survey research, and we owe her so much. She has a heritage. Okay, the second thing I want to say is that it's very important to do surveys periodically and frequently, not just periodically, but frequently. Because of our quarterly work on poverty and hunger, we know that these can change even in 3 months' time. No? Even in 3 months' time, the change can happen, and it's statistically significant. And if you didn't have a quarterly survey, how would you know? This whole business of doing it once every 3 years is hopeless. I think the least that should be done is annual. But when was the last hunger survey of the government? I don't know. 2018, 2019? That's ancient history already. So you have to have periodic surveys, and we do what we can because we don't have so many resources, but everyone should get into the act so that there will be more periodic, even if it's not the same one doing it all the time, but just from the fact that many are involved, there will be periodic data. Now, the third thing I want to mention has to do with feedback. With the feedback from the public, all right, to everyone else, okay? Does it matter? You know, like the people hate China, but look at what's happening, right? Now, this to me is a big issue of democracy. It's a big issue of government. It's a big issue of accountability. No, this is not to be solved by researchers. It's to be solved by everybody, the people, we all have a role to play. Media has a role to play, advocacy groups have a role, politicians have a role. Everybody has a role to play over here. Right? We just do what we can. Actually, we can't complain about media in the sense that we don't have, we're not throttled, we're not censored. All right, we're not censored. There's so much coming out. We're decently reported. Once in a while, it's a mistake, but we correct the mistake, and sometimes they correct it, and sometimes not. But generally, our message gets out. So this is an issue of democracy, really, of democracy, and we're all part of that, and we must all do what we can within our capabilities, within our influence, and so forth. Right? This is what I tell our staff. Just remember that you are always biased for freedom. Not that we're biased. Freedom to speak out. Freedom for the people's results to come out. Now, what happens with that freedom is not our responsibility, It's everybody's responsibility. We're just trying to open eyes, and give real data, not fake, and just keep on doing it. But if people don't listen, well, we all do what we can. We all do what we can. You can pray, right? That's part of maybe a social solution also. Just don't knock it. The boss up there can do anything he likes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mangahas. To Mercy Abad, the question I think from Giselle was, have you considered, or are you thinking about microfinance for the children to do vocational training?
Thank you, Mahar. I was shocked by Mahar's comment because I had forgotten my past life. I'm so consumed and totally taken up by microfinance now. But it's really an amazing work because every family you transform. It's just so gives you that very good feeling that makes you jump out of bed the next morning. It does work, but we have to be patient because first we have to get rid of their mindsets, which are very self-defeating, and I think the biggest goal of microfinance is to liberate the nanay and to give her freedoms that is due her, like freedom to choose, freedom to speak out, freedom to develop herself. And of course, we're aware that there's a lot of violence in that area. And one of her biggest problems is her husband. So anyway, I can talk endlessly about these things, but sure. Then she, because of the help of microfinance, she's able to send her children to school. And so it's going to be generational. The next generation will be much better off. Now she has a college graduate. Then eventually this college graduate knows better and will make her children move out and work whatever and choose whatever they want to eventually become. So, but we have to be patient. In the meantime, we have to release the nanays first from their prisons.
And I just wanted to really say, it was really so inspiring. You talked about 87,000 success stories. I think I got that number right. I wrote it down because that was really an amazing result of all the work. Yes, that's really inspiring. There was a question also for you, Mario. I guess Giselle was asking you to expound a little bit on your plans for the University of Rizal system.
Yes, thanks, Francis. So last year, and thank you for the question, Giselle. So last year we launched the annual Francisco and Enriqueta Angeles Memorial Science Lecture in honor of my in-laws who were former science teachers in that school. But we launched it at the University of Rizal system, which has like 9 campuses, because we believe that we really need to do some intervention work in terms of science teaching and research in this university, which has a massive reach. I thought that this is also like some kind of a foot in the door for us to be able to share eventually what we learn from our museum and heritage work. But yes, there's like a plan for it this year. Actually, we invited Dr. Windel Rivera to talk about science writing and publishing, hopefully to be able to influence, or make a dent in terms of the rate of publication, science publication among the faculty, which is really, as you may have guessed, really, really low. But I would like to just respond to one question from one of our members of the audience about values, like what values can the museum teach? So this is actually from Christy Garzuta Galliano. I can talk about values, like a plethora of values, and there's like a typology of values, but then I believe that a lot of values are learned from the museum or our heritage work vicariously. And one of them is like the respect for the community, the respect for history and heritage. In fact, there's a story about these 2 scavenger boys who came to us with like some old coins, which they could have actually sold, but instead donated to the museum because they thought that, well, they're valuable. They're valuable for the community. They can earn like some pesos from those coins, but they instead donated to the museum. So we were really so delighted and happy that, oh, what we were doing has effects even to these poor boys who could have like earned from what they found, but instead like donated to the museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. You get a thumbs up from Christy. We can open the floor to 1 or 2 questions. I think, is Dr. Pernia, are you raising your hand?
I'm raising my hand.
Oh, okay. Sure, please go ahead.
Just a couple of quick comments and maybe a rejoinder. This is to Dr. Mangahas, a former distinguished colleague of mine, valued. I follow his columns, his column every week. Anyway, you were talking about the composition of socioeconomic groups, Mahar,
yeah.
And, by education. But perhaps access to healthcare is also important. And, it's because there's no direct correlation between health and education among families. I think parents tend to neglect health just to be able to send their kids to education. Education seems to be valued more by parents than health. And that's because health is really something invisible, it's not so, it's a long-term thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing is, I wonder if you can have a question on the relationship between the private sector and the public sector, or the private sector, businesses, and government. Because, recently, it seems that there has been an adversarial relationship between the public sector and the private sector. And this is not good because it really deters investment and economic activity from the private sector. So I wonder if, you can ask, what is the opinion of people about how the government should relate to the private sector? To me, it should be a relationship of friendship and partnership. because both are needed for the economy, for the growth of the economy. Okay, and then just a quick rejoinder to Mercy Abad. You mentioned that this family planning thing is well, it's a very important dimension of development, I think, and that's because it has impacts not only on health, but even on even on the economy. And that is why we had, during my term in NEDA, I had the Population Commission moved to NEDA from DOH because it had a DOH had a lackadaisical attitude toward family planning. But in NEDA, we really pushed it hard, and we want it to be related to development planning as well, because without family, no lack of family planning, especially among the poor, results in so much stunting and wasting of children, and how that affects the potential of the children moving as they grow old and as they join the labor force. So, you said that there's not enough support from the government. Yeah, the family planning program is now going on full steam, but it's constrained by the budget. It is underfunded by the government.
Yeah.
There's too many things that the government is, attending to, and there is also this concern about credit rating, and all that kind of thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Can
you,
I reply
Secretary
to that,
Peña.
Can I reply to that, Ernie?
Yeah.
Ernie, I really would like to have more data on socioeconomic status. And there'll be more chance to do that when we can get to face-to-face surveying.
Okay.
While it's still on a mobile phone surveying, when you only have 20 minutes and so much to talk about, that will, I can't put that in yet so far. Next, about the relationship between government and the private sector. It's a good idea for research where we would, if we still had our old surveys of businessmen, that would be one of the things I'd like to ask. I will raise this up with my crowd. My business crowd is the Foundation for Economic Freedom. All right, there are lots of people there. Some of them may want to sponsor these kinds of research. This can be done. I mean, I would know how it could be done, but this is not something that I could fund myself from our own resources, SWS. So there are lots of businessmen there, and lots of government officials there. To me, the doing of research, is is also a matter of getting down to saying, okay, I'll pay for that. Huh? I'll pay for that. Then it will get done. Huh? Then it will get done. Do I have a 1-minute story? Can I tell you something? Huh? Francis?
Sure, go ahead.
In August 1987, I got a call from my friend of the Department of Agriculture. At that time, it was Sonny Dominguez. And Sonny said, this military coup attempt is terrible. Can you ask public opinion about it? What do people think about it? It's going on. Huh? The coup attempt was going on. And I said, Sonny, I have a little money in the bank and I can do it, but can you pay me back? And he said, yes, go. And we did, right? And we did. And we discovered from there that the people were against the military coup plotters and that they supported Cory Aquino all the more because she resisted them. And then we were able to report it to the president. And she said, I thought people didn't like me anymore. I'm so glad for that. Now, Sonny Dominguez got me my money back from one of these other agencies. And it took 3 to 6 months before that happened. But I learned from there that if a businessman says, I'll do it, you don't have to have a signature, you know. He'll do it. He'll pay for it. And that's what we need. You know, 2 years later in 1989, there was another coup attempt. And then this time, on my own, I called up our clients. 3 clients, San Miguel, Ayala, and Shell. And I told each of them, you want a survey on this? I'll pay for it, each of you, 1/3 of the cost, each of you. And each of them said, yes, go. And on that basis, oral basis, we went and we did it. And again, we found that people were against the military coup attempt. If it's this businessmen and they say go, if they go, that's their word is good. But if it's government, I say, oh nako, you know, pirmado na nga, hindi pa silang magbabayad. All right? This is a matter of sincerity, you know, and personal integrity. See, and that's how we have to operate. Now, we've done things on our own, you know, and never mind the cost. We paid for it, right? We've done things where we didn't get paid back. All right? I mean, it's part of life. But the ones who you know, really mean something, you know, they'll back it up. They'll back it up. And that's what we need to do. Don't, you know, you know, I'm so glad that we saved enough so that we are now doing these mobile phone surveys, you know, and paying for the deficit ourselves as it is. And we'll see how much longer we can do it. At least one more round, and I hope 2. But if we stop collecting revenue from other sources, how can we do that? You see, this is all of us pitching in together, and this is not because you know, this is not for profit. We're a non-profit organization, and we're careful about the subject matter that we get into, of course, so that it's not flippant. You know, it's not something that we could say, oh, bakit niyo pa ginawa yun? Sayang lang yung survey question na yun.
Thank you, Dr. Mangahas. I think I have time for one more question, and then I wanted to give all the panelists a chance for you know, a last word. Al Serafika has been raising his hand for a while, so I'm acknowledging you, Al. Go ahead.
Thank you, Francis. This one is actually for the first speaker, Father Nebres. Very impressive work indeed. But again, I'm trying to put my arm around what you're doing, because I did speak to Shell Habito about stunting about 3 years back, being part of the USAID project Stride with us. And we've been wanting to use technology for this particular problem, indeed, on growth stunting. And I advised the UST as well on the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. And they just came up with the Nutribun technology, as well as the fortified rice. I wonder whether it has a communication with your efforts in the feeding program, and will it impact, and is it scalable? Thank you.
About the Nutribun, I think because of we're going to open the kitchens. The Department of Education is actually proposing that. But you just have to understand that to ask children to live on Nutribuns every day is a bit tough. No? So it's okay, but as a supplement. The scalability of what we're doing really is very dependent on the LGUs coming in. One, because there is national funding, but to implement it well, it's very difficult for the schools to do it by themselves, because the teachers have to teach and the principals have to govern. So that's why really the work that Ateneo and Gawad Kalinga has been really to get more and more LGUs to come in. Anyway, their contribution need not be very big because there are national funds, but they're providing transportation, they're initially building the kitchen, they're mobilizing volunteers, is really very important. So the scalability of the kitchens that we have is very dependent now on cooperation from LGUs and others. So that's what we've been trying to do. More and more all over. So we hope that will continue. So we're really appealing to LGUs, to mayors, because their role is very, very important in this area. But the other problem really is now how to reach the first 1,000 days because they are scattered. The mothers and the babies are not in one place. And that's been a very difficult challenge. As I mentioned, there are initiatives, mainly from LGUs. I cited Iriga City, I cited Quezon Province, and of course, Malabon. But it's a new frontier. We have not been able to look at a scalable model yet for it. But obviously, it's very crucial because during that period that babies' brains are developing, and malnutrition at that age will create permanent damage. So that is something that we're working very hard on, but we need all the help we can get because the problem of getting the food to the mothers and the children is very difficult. Maybe we could invite more to look at the Malabon model. It's very impressive. And if more LGUs would tackle that together with the Department of Health, we might be able to scale up the feeding for mothers and babies up to 2 years old.
Thank you. I think that somebody did mention the WIC program in the United States, which is specifically for mothers who are lactating and nursing. But of course, that's administered through their welfare system. I think, I don't know if we have an equivalent capability to do it under DOH, given the problems that they're having already as it is. But in the US, having been there for 25 years, my sister was part of the WIC program when she lost her job. And so I can attest to that it might be one of the solutions we can look at for the first 1,000 days. I don't know if we've looked at it already, but just wanted to make it aware that there is a program in the US that we might be able to see if we can localize it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. So it's been a really interesting morning or evening. Really inspiring talks. I wanted to give all the panelists one last round, one last chance to maybe give us a closing message, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes. In particular, anything they want to tell the audience. For example, maybe some people are asking, how can we help? How can we be involved with ASHI? Or how can we be involved with Kusina ng Kalinga? How can we be involved with the Morong Museum? So maybe we'll go and give the panelists 1 or 2 minutes or closing remarks and just, parting messages for the audience. I'll start with you, Mario.
Thank you, Francis. Of course, we're always on the lookout for partners, in everything that we're doing. So in case you need people who have experience in heritage project and you want to start something in your own locality, we can perhaps give some advice. But for now, I'd like to just engage people in discussions. And one of the discussions that we're going to have will be on Sunday in the group discussion on social innovation that's still under PAASE. We will be talking about, the many issues surrounding social innovation, and we'll be again using Museong Pambayan ng Morong and LIKAS Morong as an exemplar. Not only Museong Pambayan ng Morong, but we'll also be looking into the Mahar Scholars Program, a highly successful model of a science scholars program here in the US, to look into the possibility of adapting it in the Philippines because it has been adapted in several universities here in the US, supported by Howard Hughes Medical Institute or the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. So our discussion will have Dr. Cora de Hungria of UP-NSRI, Dr. Ton Clemente of Pambansang Samahan sa Psikolohiya Pilipino, Professor Joe Junicio, the chair of the Sociology Department, Executive Director of the Mahar Scholars Program, Keith Harmon, Director Cecil Gericami of DLSU Museum in Dasmariñas, and Dr. Tahira Madi of UMBC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Let me call on Mercy Abad. Last words, or how can we be involved if people want to help ASHI? And also last words, anything that you want to say to the audience?
Yeah. Well, many of us have mindsets about the poor, that they are hopeless or they are tamad. That's not true. All they need is an option. And you know what? It also builds communities. Once you touch the life of a few, then you start building a bigger community. And what happened during the lockdown? I was scared because I thought they might go hungry, since not everybody was really given the funding that the government promised. So I was so surprised because there were very few who went hungry, only those in very remote places. They took care of each other. The centers took care of each other. So I guess that's one of the benefits of working at transforming their mindsets and the way of looking at things. Yeah, it has its special graces. So if you want to, what do you call us, help, you may send your donations. We can always need some help anytime.
Thank you, Mercy. Really inspiring story. Dr. Mangahas?
Thank you, Francis. I want to commend Ateneo in general. Well, actually, the church. This whole. How did we start? We're a spin-off from a committee, the research committee of the Bishops' Businessmen's Conference in 1984. This research committee was chaired by Father Bernas of Ateneo. And well, I and Mercy were delegated, to do the first BBC survey, and we did that. And then when I was able to, organize some funds for our first program, Ateneo agreed to be a partner for these funds because I didn't have an organization at all of myself. I had to form one. In fact, that's why we organized in 1985, and on all of that. But so Ateneo became our partner for 2 years, 1986 and 87, and that was our beginning. We have spread the word. I'm happy about Ateneo de Naga, about Ateneo de Davao, about Xavier, and I'm the most happy about Holy Name University in Bohol. All of this we have gone to and helped in establishing, or we didn't establish, but in strengthening their survey capability. So I look at them as our colleagues all over the country who can do this particular kind of work, you see, and that's how we must all help each other. As well as also our colleagues abroad, who help us in all these kinds of things. So what's needed is partnership, sama-sama, kapit-bisig, as they say. I wanted to remember Father Bernas in particular because Father Bernas is, he's very sick now. And I don't know, how much longer he'll have him with us, but I want to salute him, Father Bernas, my former teacher in Latin, who, you might say, helped us very much in getting started 35 years ago. And the Ateneo as a whole, the Ateneo as a whole. There are some things Ateneo cannot work on because they have their own restrictions. And there are some things UP cannot work on also because it's government, it has no restrictions. So I'm perfectly happy not having a direct affiliation with any university. But of all of these schools, I would say, it's in terms of tapang, ang mga Ateneo, sila ang pinakamatapang, and they go to work on these things. And all over the country, let's help. There are so many academic institutions that can do surveys and opinion polls. Now you have to raise your own money, okay? And when they're interested and sincere about it, they do. And that's part of the work, that's part of the work. That's research entrepreneurship. That's what I learned from my own teacher in Chicago, Theodore Schultz. Research is an enterprise. It requires taking a risk. Let's all do that.
Thank you, Mahar. And finally, the last word, parting message from Father Ben Nebres.
Thank you, Francis. So maybe just two things. One is, how can you help? Well, right now, because of the pandemic and hunger has gone so much higher, we're really trying to raise more funds because the government funds are not enough and they don't reach everybody for school feeding, especially in the poorest places. If we'd appreciate any help, you can contact me. I'll send to the email of Francis knows my email. You can actually send to Francis. Francis is part of Gawad Kalinga USA, and I hope he doesn't mind my mentioning that. Gawad Kalinga USA is actually helping us raise funds for the school feeding. I think Maricel Villanueva, the executive secretary, has on the Zoom link. So if you contact any of us, or even Dr. Giselle Concepcion, because he's been very interested in the work we do in school feeding. I think if you contact any of them, we'll make sure that we contact you on how to help. Everything is appreciated because really hunger has grown so much higher now, and we really need to do something about it. And so that's the first thing we'd appreciate your help. I'd just like to make one point because the question of limiting family size, family planning, and problem of hunger are connected. We normally would like to think that we begin with family planning and then worry about hunger. But I'll tell you something that we may not realize. Poverty, one of the effects of poverty in a family is that they cannot think beyond today or tomorrow. If you know the typical very poor family, they wake up in the morning and they're wondering whether they'll have a next meal. And so to be able to plan for the future of the children is something that is not in their mind. They're just worried about providing food for them. However, if you do help them, as Mercy Abad says is doing, if you help them and they begin to be able to take care of their children and they be able to send them to school, then they will think about how will we be able to do this for the future. And so they will begin to think about limiting their family. So what I want to point out is that the ability to plan for one's family depends on a future orientation. It depends on the ability to think about the future. And when we help them reach that point, as Mercy does with the and other groups with microfinance, then we really do more things for them. We help them to begin to think of the future and to plan for the future. In fact, in my own understanding of poverty, when a family reaches that, then I am sure they'll get out of poverty. So developing the ability to think for the future and to plan for the future of your children is, for me, the best indication of a family getting out of poverty. So please think about that giving them the first step, as Mercy says, and giving the children the first step is really also the way forward to think of families that can plan for the future and think of limiting their families.
Thank you, Father Ben. And, you know, I don't think we can top those eloquent parting words. So at this point, I just want to thank all the panelists, Father Ben Nebres, Mahar Mangahas, Mercy Abad, and Mariano Domingo. It was really an inspirational morning. We're learning all about the work that you all do. I hope the rest of you who are listening in were inspired also. We've been recording this, and so at some point we'll put it up on maybe the PAASE website if you or your friends or other colleagues want to listen to all these inspiring stories too. So I hope you have a good day, and really appreciate you all sticking with us all the way to the end. Thank you very much for joining this plenary session.
Thank you. Thank you also, Francis.
Thank you, Francis.